down. That's all.
That's all.
Hey, Miller, give him a get out of jail free card, bro.
Right. Let me go check my Monopoly board. I might have one for you. Actually, you just went live on YouTube.
Okay, good. Maybe they get your hands out my pocket, YouTube. Tell them get the. I gotta show you. Remind me to show y'all a picture when we get done of the Thuggy cult. This picture I came across, man, it's gonna blow your mind unless you guys have seen it already. But anyway, I think we're live now, so just want to welcome everyone to the podcast. This is Expanding Perspectives.
Conversation at a time.
One conversation at a time. I'm looking at someone sent me.
You're not live on Facebook, at least on my end. I don't know whether they're blocking you or not, but I'm not picking you up on Facebook.
Okay. Let me see here.
I gotta run and get my charger real quick.
No, I don't think I see myself on live. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the YouTube one. Okay. Here we go. Tell me if you see that one, Miller.
Okay, hold on. I went to YouTube to share it to mine. Let's see if it's coming up on yours yet. Yep.
Okay. Sounds good. Sounds good. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started, and we probably won't be as long as normal. Maybe we'll see. Here on Expanding Perspectives, one conversation at a time. So I want to talk about a couple things. You know, on July 4th, Cori Bush, who's a relatively new legislator, congresswoman, made a statement for July 4th that says, this article says, Cori Bush blasts America and claims blacks aren't free on the 4th of July. American freedom is for white people. And that was July 6th. And first of all, I'd just like to say that's an absurd, ridiculous comment. And I'm surprised that any intelligent person would make that kind of statement, especially lacking historical perspective. But I want to start the conversation off by saying, you know, there's a lot of talk about race and racism in America. You know, they just recently signed Juneteenth into law as a federal holiday, which I applaud personally, because Juneteenth is a demonstration that although America, you know, started off with slavery, started off as a nation where slavery was legal here, and you know the other things that have happened, but Juneteenth is a demonstration that the principles of our Constitution and Bill of Rights actually had some kind of meaning to them, right? They were actually recognized by all people now, that we all can grab a hold of those principles in the Bill of Rights and use those to live our lives. But I think that it's so important for us to look at things from a broader perspective, because what people that are pushing critical race theory and this whole idea that America is a systemically racist country and all those things that they're pushing. I've heard some wealthy, famous people saying black people are still getting gunned down literally every single day. And I hear this kind of rhetoric, and the rhetoric is really dangerous. It's counterproductive. It instills fear. It causes division and all that other stuff. And so because of that, but what I see for the most part is people are actually, they take, and you can take any snapshot in time, any framework, anything, and take it out of context and use it to promote any idea that you want to. And the reason I say that is because when we say about how horrible America is because of the past, because of slavery, prejudice, racism, and all that other stuff, there's two things that we leave out. And I would say that it really only took, when I was talking to the person who wrote that article we were talking about, it took me about 30 seconds to give a couple phrases to debunk that statement, which is amazing to me, because we still have this conversation over and over again every day. So in order for us to denounce America and talk about how horrible it is because of slavery and Jim Crow, we are ignoring not only history as a whole, human history, but we're also not looking at things on an international basis, because as we all know, that slavery is one of the oldest institutions in human history, dating back thousands of years. Every single, and race is a social construct, but every race of people that we've been divided in has owned slaves, and every race of people has been enslaved. As a matter of fact, at some point, Africans enslaved Europeans. We know that the Asians have enslaved. So every race of people, which we call race, has been enslaved, has enslaved people, and has enslaved its own people. And so that's part of human nature and our fallen nature. Slavery as an institution, which was first made illegal and deemed as being immoral in the Judeo-Christian West, with Great Britain leading the charge, and then America, is still legal many places and still active around the world. And I've heard an account that says in Africa right now, there are more slaves in Africa right now than there were during the time of the transatlantic slave trade. So again, if we were to only look at the snapshot and ignore history, human history, and also ignore international practices, if you will, for lack of a better term, if we do that, then we could say, oh, look how terrible America is, and we can point the finger. But if we do look at things honestly and logically and accurately, we would have to understand that the slavery issue is much bigger than the United States problem, and it's much bigger than a black versus white thing. And so that, with that being said, when someone makes a statement of July 4th on July 6th, or whenever she made this statement, that black people shouldn't observe the 4th of July because blacks are still not free in America, I want you guys to chime in. What is your response to that? The blacks are still not free in America in 2021. What do you think, Miller?
I agree with you. That's really a bogus train of thought, because when you really look at it, there's no African American that wakes up every day and have to go out to a field to work for no pay, has to clean a master's house for no pay. We all are enabled, we all are empowered, we all are embodied to actually go out and make a living. We have more black millionaires now than any point in time. And I'm not just talking about athletes. We see the athletes, and you can have many different conversations about the whole structure, about the owners versus the athletes, but still you have men who are making millions of dollars, who are actually, when they utilize their money properly, they're becoming billionaires. You also have other entertainers in Hollywood. You have Denzel Washington making 20 plus mil a movie. You have other stars, Samuel L. Jackson making 20 plus mil a movie, and the list goes down the line. Even some of the lower people, they're making $1 million, $2 million, $3 million a movie. But you look besides that, if you just take an issue of Black Enterprise magazine, the one that they do the BE list of 100s, and it shows all of the wealthiest or the most money making Black companies in the United States in the past year. And I used to watch that. I used to read that years ago, back when I was in my 20s, because it was coming out of college. That was just inspiration to me, because I saw all of these Black billionaires that I never knew existed. I'm talking about the car dealerships, the tech firms, the various companies, even the financial money managers, these different hedge funds. And in a society where African Americans can go out and literally make millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars. We actually have several billionaires in the country right now. You can't tell me that we are in a system of slavery, and that the fact that you can't ignore the fact that, okay, we have achieved a whole lot more than where we were. Yes, slavery did exist, it lasted in this country. And as you have already stated, that ended. And for something to end that was truly systemic, it was systemic because it was a part of law. It stated that we were slaves according to law. We were owned. We were chattel property. But when all of that ended the systematic racism. The issue that we have today is that there's still people with racist ideologies in their heart. And the funny thing about that, you just can't say it's white people who are racist. Black people are racist too. You have Chinese people who are racist. You have other Asians who are racist. There are racist people within every race. This whole construct we call a race. There are people who are racist, and they walk with those ideologies, and they perpetrate those ideologies against those who they are racist against. And those are the things we don't look at. We don't look at the mere fact that it's the individual heart. It's the individuals who are operating out of the evilness of their heart, and not even the evilness sometimes. They're operating out of the trauma, the hurt out of their heart, things that have happened to them, things that they have been taught as children and they grew up believing because they believe what their parents told them. And based upon those things right there, you can't sit back and say that we're not free. We're not free. And even if you look at certain things that have happened to certain individuals, you have to take those things on an individual basis and look at them line by line, person by person, what actually happened. Because one thing that happens to one African American is not happening to the other. There are obviously many African Americans who are doing very well, succeeding, and those people are not being propped up. If you ask most people about that Black Enterprise 100 best business 100s list, most people are like, well, I don't know what you're talking about. And there were companies hitting the $1 billion mark in sales back 20 years ago, but you didn't hear about it. You didn't hear about that in mainstream media. So no, I can't go along with the fact that we're not free, because if we were free and racism was still systematic, I don't think the powers that be would allow African Americans to make billions of dollars for themselves. Not okay, I'm an athlete generating $1 billion for a white owner of a basketball team or football team. No, these are African Americans owning their own business, generating billions of dollars for their own company to create legacy for themselves. So I can't agree with that statement.
Well, you think about it, then I want Morris to chime in. You think about it, in China, there's athletes in China that'll be participating in the Olympics or whatever, but even though they might have the same skill level as someone from America, they're not millionaires.
Right.
Their talents are being used by their government, and the government is benefiting from it, as opposed to in America. And I thought it was interesting, LeBron James, that he had made that, and I wasn't a big fan of some of his statements, but he made that statement a little while ago. I think it was last year, that we're being hunted down every time we leave our house. And then I read an article today or yesterday that said by the end of the year, LeBron James will be a billionaire.
Right.
Officially. So think about that. Like, how do you, on one side of your face, talk about how, racist this country is and how you fear for your life, but then you're going to become a billionaire. So now you're in the top 1% of 1% in the world. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're not right. And LeBron James didn't become a billionaire because he split an atom, or because he built a rocket ship that went to Mars, or that he did open heart surgery, or created or invented something that nobody else could. He did it because of his basketball talents. He's 6'8", 265, 70 pounds, can run and jump, and he maximized his talents. And because of that, he's becoming he's very wealthy and very influential. And so I think it's very dangerous when we allow that rhetoric to continue on in this day and age, And so Morris, I want to get you to chime in on this. And would you like to be that kind of slave? Wouldn't you like to be a slave like LeBron James is? Or
yeah, they a lot of these cats are making money for them, so they making money for them, and so they getting paid money for making money. But see, all of these things we say are true, and because for the most part, our people don't know all of this, because I'm gonna tell you something. I was one of them ones that felt like they felt, even with you, Pastor, trying to help me to understand that the laws that America passed that against treating blacks a certain kind of way make it, change the whole scenario. And because I felt like what good is the law if it's not applicable? You know what I mean? So for them to write a law saying it's not right to treat me bad because of the color of my skin, but then when I go to the workplace and try to get a job, or I go to the bank try to get a loan to buy a house or something, and they charge me more interest than they charge the white person, or I go to the courthouse and I get more time than a white person or a non-white person that did the same crime. I was looking at it like that because that law didn't help me. You understand? So like you said, it's because of the laws we are free. We are free to do whatever we want. But you have people in America that are not following the laws, and basically there's nothing being done about it. You know what I mean? So I understand why they're saying we're not free as a people when you look at how we're getting treated as a people, regardless of what the law says about the treatment that we get. That's what they're looking at. So we have to bring out these facts. We have to bring out the fact that they have to strive to accept their freedom. You know what I mean? And stop being brainwashed by what the media is saying and what the media is pointing out. Because like you said, they're always showing, like when a black person get killed by a cop, they show all that thing over and over and over and over again. And so we focus on what we see and what we hear, not knowing that more whites get that treatment than us. It's just that they don't report that. Why? Because they have a certain agenda that they want to keep going, and the masses does not know. So and it was your knowledge and understanding of that thing that even helped me see it the way I see it now, because I was like them when this thing first started. Because all the laws in the world ain't gonna help me if the people ain't applying the law to me.
Well, and you know what? I looked at the same right around the time George Floyd's incident happened. I went online. They had a video of a young white kid who the same thing happened exactly. It was in Arizona or someplace like that. The cop knelt on the back of the kid. Come to find out, the kid actually had learning disability, which is why he wasn't responding properly. But he died, and in police custody because of the police applying pressure to him. But that didn't make the news. Nobody saw it. They didn't have any riots about that person because, again, as you said, it's an agenda. And also, when we look at things, see, when people throw out that term systemic racism is racism that is codified by law or policy. So what you're saying is, if it's a law, like chattel slavery was systemic racism because they said by law, you could own a black person, and black people didn't have certain rights, or even women, during the women's suffrage time, women couldn't vote by law. So that's systemic. That's when you talk about systemic, when you talk about policy. So it would have to be a policy. In Alabama, during the time of Governor Wallace, who was the governor of Alabama, stood on the steps of University of Alabama and said, no black person will attend the University of Alabama. Since he's the governing authority of that state, that was a policy and it was expressed. So that's systemic. So we have to differentiate between systemic versus an individual who is biased or prejudiced or something like that. Yeah. And so, and to your point, the nation can't change people's hearts and laws can't change your heart. That's the wickedness of mankind. And
that's what you help me understand. That's what you help me understand to change my perspective.
Yeah. So again, the only way we can overcome people that are biased or prejudiced or something like that is you have to bring it to the light. You have to show that they're, get the statistics and numbers together. And then that's important too, because as a PhD or doctoral level, when you do research, you realize that you can't go by your perception of things. You have to look at a broader, larger scale cross-reference in order to see what the reality is. Because like I mentioned, I share it with you guys. My stepfather, when I was young, I lived in a almost all black neighborhood, predominantly black neighborhood. And I remember him making a statement when I was very young. They try to say there's more white people in America. There's no way in the world there's more white people than black people. You could just look around and see there's more black people than white people, right? But that's because we lived in an all black neighborhood. But as soon as you leave the neighborhood and drive down, drive down the turnpike a little bit, then you see places where there's no black people anywhere close around. So that's why it's important, which is why it's important for us to have these conversations, but also for us to look at the agenda that's being perpetrated. You know, there's an agenda that's being perpetrated as to why you will see George Floyd over and over again, but you won't see the white kid from Arizona who got treated the same way. You know, I saw the marches from last year, and then I looked at Chicago, and Chicago's having a record year of homicides. Yes. You know, last 4th of July weekend, they had like 90 or 100 people that got shot, and all these people are getting murdered in Chicago, black on black crime, predominantly gang violence and all that other stuff. Where's the march or protest for that? And just think about it from a perspective. If we were to say we really care about black lives and we want to preserve the black community, if there's 1,000 murders and 999 of them are black on black and the one is white on black, why would we spend 99% of our time trying to solve something that only accounts for less than 1%? Statistically speaking, less than 1% of black males are killed by white police officers, unarmed black males. Less than a half of it. I read one statistic, it was about 0.3%. So that's a third of 1%. But yet, if you watch the news, that's the main thing that's happening. We're going to put all of our effort, and think about a society or a culture. If we spend 99% of our effort trying to solve a problem that accounts for 0.3% of our issue, what about the other 99%? You know, what about all of those? You know, what about the fact that black kids in certain inner cities don't go to school because they're afraid? They had a story about some of the parents that had to take off of work to go to the bus stop to get their kid because they were afraid that if their kid walked home by themselves, they would be the victim of gang violence. And so I think that we always have to have these realistic conversations. And how do we really solve issues? What is the real thing behind it? And again, going back to the overall theme is that America and Great Britain were two of the first nations in history to make it illegal to own another person. William Wilberforce started in Great Britain with the abolitionist movement. And then, of course, the American abolitionists looked at William Wilberforce and used his strategy in America to try to get slavery abolished. When you look at the fact that when we had a civil war, and a lot of people say it's over slavery, you know, that was one of the primary themes. Half the people fighting to end slavery were white. You know what I mean? This was white people fighting against other white people. Right. You know, it was a very small amount of black people that were fighting in it. When you think about those things, when you think about, and especially it was the message of the gospel that pricked the hearts of the people to say, hey, it's wrong to enslave other people. And again, that's why I say it's so important when we look at these issues. If we ignore historical information, and if we ignore the large picture, if I just focus on what I see on the news every single day, yeah, I can believe those things. But when we broaden the scope and look at the reality of the issue, you know, I talk about how that example I like to use is one time I was on the track when I was training, you know, for basketball. I was running on the track by myself. Nobody was around me. And I thought I was really running fast. I mean, I was like, I felt the wind blowing. I felt the wind blowing in my face. And I'm like, I'm really getting it in. And then the track team came to train. And one of the track guys was like basically lapping me, you know, and I realized that my perspective was wrong. You know, my isolated perspective said I'm really running fast. But then when the reality of the matter is I wasn't nearly as running. And so that's why I say all that to say it's important for us to look at things from the larger perspective and have these truthful conversations, you know, in order for us to know. And that's why I think Juneteenth is important. And I know I might get a lot of flack for it. I think the Juneteenth, and I think that's why some of these race baiters want to ignore Juneteenth, because Juneteenth is a sign that what the framers wrote in the Constitution actually mattered.
That's it. And that's making us start. You know what I mean? We got to start somewhere. And so what I believe we doing it right now, but what I believe we have to do is to give them a broader picture to look at, because they looking at a small picture, and that small picture is all about blacks not being free. Why? Because everywhere you go, we getting treated so supposedly different than of a lot of other people. But if we pointed out the agenda, you know, that brings us to that conclusion, you know, and why they doing that, maybe it'll broaden their understanding, make them look at it from a different perspective. Like you showed me. I didn't notice this until you pointed it out. The thing with the journalist. A journalist is supposed to tell the news, not tell you how to think about it. And that's what they do. Trump lied and said, as opposed to saying Trump said. You understand? So the agenda there by telling me Trump lied is for me to say, go by him lying. So now once they say he lied, everything they say after that, I believe what they said. He lied about that thing. It didn't have to be a lie. They just said it was a lie, and I believed it because they already programmed me to believe it was a lie.
Right. They poison your thinking, and I'm gonna let you chime in, Miller. But they poison your thinking because if I said and I heard the one time it was interesting. This is when I realized that there was a bigger agenda going on. Hillary and Trump were having a debate. Whenever Trump said something, they did the fact checkers. They said Trump made the erroneous statement or he lied and said this. But then when Hillary said something that the fact checkers said, they said, well, what she said wasn't necessarily true. It wasn't all the way true. And I'm thinking, so why is his misstatement a lie? And why is hers that she just didn't say something that was true? But I'm sorry, Miller, go ahead.
That's all about perception in the mind. I was sitting here thinking, I want to give an analogy to something you were talking about, Morris, that hopefully will, I know you got it, but hopefully this analogy will help some of our audience, our viewers.
Yes.
When you think about the system and the system was systemically racist when slavery existed, and then a new law was put in place abolishing slavery. Think of it, and I heard something similar, so I'm going to apply it here. Think of it from a plumbing solution. I don't know if you know anything about plumbing or if anybody's listening know anything about plumbing, but if you had a pipe attached and you were running the line, and let's say that line was slavery, and all of a sudden you say, okay, now I need to detach that line because that line is bad. I need to put a new line in place. When you put a new plumbing line in place, what happens? You're going to get dirt in that line. You're going to get some of that grit that was in that other line is going to be in there. And that's what you see with what people call systemic racism today. What it is those people who are operating out of the ill, the trauma, the evil of their heart. They are the dirt. They are the debris that's still in that new plumbing line. What you have to do as plumbers do, you got to let the water run, or you got to blow those new pipes out to get the dirt, the gunk, all that stuff out of it. And that's the problem. If you think about it, blowing, we blow when we speak. So until we stand up and speak to those powers that be, and sometimes our speaking is in the sense of voting, because we have people in place in society at the local level on up who are part of that dirt, who are part of that gunk that are still those racist mindsets. And those are the people that get highlighted because they are unfortunately still in power. And they utilize that position and they manipulate the laws to do what they want to do. So until we speak with our mouths or even with our pen or casting our vote and blow that gunk out the pipe and get those people out of the line, we won't see change. But we have to stand up and say, let's get this, let's effectuate the change. Let's put people in place that's going to do it. We have the power to vote. And that's what people want to sit back and complain about, this not happening, that not happening. Let your voice be known. Because, I've always had, I guess, a different perspective. I've never had the mindset like you were under at one time, thinking that the system was rigged against us. That just wasn't my experience. And I can sit here and say that on the other side. And that's why I guess I have for the longest told people, I understand what you're saying, but you have to look at your situation. I don't know who you dealt with or what your full total situation was. But me as a young man, I purchased a home when I was in college, and I didn't get a bad interest rate. I got the best interest rate that was available. And beyond that, I just started doing real estate investing. I was getting some of the same deals that the Caucasians were doing. And unfortunately, I wasn't going through a black lender. I was going through white lenders, VPs of banks, and they were giving me favorable deals. I'm talking about great big deals as we were doing these different projects. And unfortunately, that's not everybody's testimony, but the part that they highlight are the people who would have fallen into the red line situations back before they had to pass the redlining laws in banking. And those who who had a racist lender who didn't want to give an African American or another minority a favorable loan. But that's not always that goes back to that perspective. My perspective has always been different because I haven't experienced a lot of the things that people say. Yeah, I have experienced things as an African American male. You can't go through life because you're gonna run into some race, especially when you're living in the South.
Yeah.
But at the same time, some of the other things that are systematic that they say was there. And so it was a thing where, like I said, it goes back to we have to blow the dirt out of the line. We have to get it out of that plumbing line so that clean water can run. And we have to do that with our voices. And that's unfortunately, we raise our voices and make a lot of and raise a lot of sand, as we say in the past. You sitting there raising a lot of sand, but we're not raising our voices with our pen. We're not raising our voices with our votes. We're not raising our voices with our financial power. Because but it's crazy is few of us as we are in the United States, less than what 12%, I think it is now. We are the leading spenders. We are the leading consumers in the country. We obviously getting buying power from someplace, but we will not collectively use the resources that we have to shift things to where those people who are in power positions who are acting in racist manners or who are acting in non-favorable manners, we're not exercising the resources and the powers that we have to shift those people out. Because I guarantee you, if you get enough of us involved, or not just even us, because it's so much more than us. If it wasn't for our Caucasian brothers and sisters, we would still be in slavery. It took them coming to the table and say, hey, we need to end this because we didn't have the power to do it. So that shows you right there wasn't systematic because we didn't say all of a sudden we had a revolt and we just got out of slavery. No, that didn't happen. It was our Caucasian brothers and sisters coming to the table and said, this is not right. We got to end this. And us bringing our voice to the table and saying, hey, this is what's happening. Will you stand with us? Because they've stood with us in the past. There's always going to be a group that will stand with us and help us right the wrong. But we have to get out of our situation sometime and stop hindering ourselves. Because I really believe we hinder ourselves in so many instances that we go about things the wrong way, and it makes people not want to side with us. So they say, just let them flounder out there by themselves. But if we came together collectively and stood in our power and stood with our voices and say, hey, we stand as a collective body. This is not right. Can you help us make this right? Can you help us make this wrong right? And I think if we approach that like that, I think a lot of things would shift.
Yeah, I agree with you. But and see, what I was speaking of, I ain't even talking about my own experience because I've learned how to handle situations like that. You know, go to the bank and basically demand what I want. You know what I mean? Because I tell them something like, look, I'm going to get what I want. Either you going to get it to me, I'm going to go somewhere else. Even buying cars, all that. I dealt like that. So I ain't talking about myself.
You use your voice.
Yeah. I'm talking about, for one, I did not know how to separate systemic racism from bias. You know what I mean? I grouped the conglomerate.
Right.
And because I grouped the conglomerate, I didn't feel the way y'all talking. But once I was able to separate it, you know what I mean? I understand now. But I'm talking about what I've seen in others, what I've heard others, what I've seen others go through all over America, the court system, you know what I mean? The banking system for others, not myself. But like you said, if we can learn to do that, because I know, because I've done it. So when I say we're not free, how I felt about being free and all that in America, it was based on my ignorance and not separating systemic racism from bias. Right. I know how to do that now, and I see the picture in a different light. So what we got to do is help the audience see it that way. You understand? Help them understand the difference between systemic racism and bias, prejudice, and all that. And also help them to understand that there's a bigger agenda that we are never getting to see. We understand and know the agenda, but the majority of the people don't. And because they don't, they're stuck in the fact that we're not free based on what is being propagated to them through the media and all of those outlets.
Right.
You understand? Yeah.
And think about, and you know what the other part of that is, for instance, because of us, as you're saying, being ignorant, and I had to learn from certain people, when you go to a bank, the bank is not going to necessarily give you the best deal that you can. So
Right.
if they can sell you a loan at a higher interest rate and you're ignorant to what your rights are or the loan, you might go. But once you got educated, and I heard you say this before, and I've learned it from other people, you went to the car dealership and the car dealer said, like, say for instance, you went there and the car was $45,000. Miller goes there or a white person goes there and they go, we're selling this car for $48,000. And Miller's like, oh, okay, I'll buy it for $48,000. You go in there and says, no, I only want to pay $45,000. I can buy the car if you sell it to me at $45,000. They're going to come down and give it to you at $45,000. But if you don't know, and then so Miller goes back and says, oh, that was racist. They sold me the car for $48,000. They sold you the car for $48,000 because you didn't know your rights. You didn't know how to negotiate.
Right.
You didn't know those type of things. You didn't know about interest loans because you could go in and say, look, I got a 720 credit score. I'm not paying 8% or 9%. I'm paying, here's the going rate this is the best interest rate I can get if I'm over this credit. So when people don't know, you can get taken advantage of. And a lot of that is, and here's the other part to go to our point about systemic versus somebody bias or prejudice. If you can prove that they sold you something or gave you a bad deal based on your skin color, the law has things in place that person would be penalized because of it, because it is illegal to mistreat people based on that. So the only thing we have to do is shine a light on it. And now that person, when they had redlining and all that other stuff with banks, they passed laws. As a nation, we passed laws saying that those things are illegal. So if you can show that that's the truth, now the law comes on your behalf. And again, you guys heard me say the story over and over again. Before you went into a restaurant in the Jim Crow South, they said no black people allowed. The restaurant owner calls the police on you and you get locked up for trespassing. Now, if that owner said no blacks allowed, you call the police comes and he's in trouble.
Right.
That's how you overcome systemic racism, which is different, which is why a lot of these incidents that the person may be biased or prejudiced, the individual, he tries to hide it nowadays. The reason he tries to hide it is because the law now has, certain remedies for if you can prove that person did it based on race. And that's why a lot of times they're trying to prove that this was a hate crime. They're saying this is a hate crime because there's special, you can get more time if you can prove that this person committed a crime against you based on skin color, race, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, point to what you said. I had money in the bank and I knew about, I learned about using my own money as collateral. So I called the bank and I wanted to borrow some money. And the personal service loan interest was 2%. So I wanted to get a personal service loan for $6,000 using my money in their bank as collateral. And the banker kept promoting all these other loans with high interest rate. So I had to finally tell her, and all I said was personal service loan. And she thought I did not understand what I was asking for. So she was trying to introduce me to all this other stuff. So I told her, I said, no, I want to borrow $6,000 of your money. I want to use $6,000 of my money as collateral because it's a lower interest rate when I do it that way. And then she said, oh yeah, you talking about you know what I mean? Now, if I wasn't free, I wouldn't have been able to do that. I'd have had to take what they had to offer or go about my business. But because I knew, I got what I wanted.
Right.
Exactly. And so that wasn't necessarily racism. It was that guy was going to give you a bad deal if he could get away with it.
That's right.
I'm sure that there was some white people that went in there and got the same raggedy deal because they didn't know any better, but a lot of times, and that's why I think it's important to look at it from that standpoint, because you think about a bank nowadays, of course, with all the remedies and stuff for that, banks want to loan you money.
They want to loan.
That's how they make money. And most banks and most institutions at the end of the day really don't care. They want to make money because that's their goal, but by the same token, they don't want to give you the best deal if they can help it, and I have a close person growing up, one of my mentors years ago, And he told me, I heard him call the credit card company and make them lower his interest rate on his credit card because he had a good credit record. He had paid. So, and I was like, I didn't even know you could do that. He was like, yeah,
I just did it with Wells Fargo credit card. Sure did.
He
Yeah,
called negotiate better interest rate. You guys better lower my interest rate, XYZ. So those are things that are more cultural than you know, and a lot of times with Black people, we don't understand that because some of our families, we don't have multi-generational wealth. Now that's a whole nother topic. You know, that's some of that could go back to the racism in the past, but a lot of us don't have multi-generational wealth. And so these are relatively new things. Whereas if you come from a family that has multi-generational wealth, they understand those things a little bit better. You know, they understand money and how money works. You know, I think about how a lot of times when we look at something, we go buy a car or a house, we're looking at how much my monthly payment is going to be. Whereas a person who really understands money is looking at interest rate versus long-term over the course of the loan. Right. You know, over 30 years, I'm going to spend $10,000 more on the same house because of 1% in interest. But a person who doesn't understand it will look at, well, I'm only going to pay this amount a month. A person who's looking at money and understands it says, yeah, I can pay less a month, but in 30 years, I'm going to end up paying $15,000 more, you know, for various things.
That's right.
So those things are, you know, culturally, there's a little bit of a difference there. But, you know, I think that the other statement I want us to talk about is people are saying that people will say America's not a great nation. Now, I've traveled other countries and I know people from other countries, and I'll say this without any fear of contradiction. I believe America is the greatest country on this side of heaven, right? Look at the opportunities, and I would say, and I know this, I've been to third world countries and you guys are probably familiar with this as well. If you are poor in America, there's still about 70% of the rest of the world that would trade places with you in a heartbeat. 70%. You know, I was in India. I was in India years ago, and the average person in India, the guy, my host over there says, "What's minimum wage in America?" I said, "I think it's like $7.50." He said the average person in India makes $7.50 a week. Wow. At the time, and so you know, you have people that are wealthier, but and so think about this. Think about the person in America, and I'm not saying, you know, they shouldn't pay you what you deserve, but if we're over here complaining about $7.50 an hour, and then you have people in other countries that are making that much in a week, you know, so it's all a matter of perspective. Yeah, it's and again, I'm not giving anybody a pass if they, you know, are mistreating you and not paying people their fair wages and all that other stuff. I'm not giving the uber rich a pass if they are taking advantage of people. But what I'm saying is some of the stuff that we are complaining about in America, and you look at the larger picture, and that if we went to our great grandparents, like for instance, the example we use, and then I'm gonna get you to chime in, Miller. The example they use about voter suppression in Georgia and other places, that you have to show an ID in order to vote. And then they said, the law says, you know, which they took it out of context, you can't give a bottle of water to somebody if they're standing in line. And they use that as glaring examples of voter suppression. Now you go to your great grandparents and great grandparents and tell them how horrible it is that you have to show an ID. And you know, they'll tell you how the Ku Klux Klan in the South was the military arm of the Democratic Party that actually would threaten people's lives, Black people's lives, if they went to vote. Right. Or the poll taxes or literacy tests and all that other stuff. That was real voter suppression. And so I say, as Black people, if we are hanging our hats on the fact that if somebody requires me to have a standardized ID in order to vote, and that's an obstacle that I can't overcome, then we are doing a great disservice to those our ancestors who went before us.
You know, it's funny, man. I'll stand here in agreement with you. You know, there's no comparison. I've done some international travel. I've gone to Nigeria. I went to Nigeria back in 2011 for a film award. One of my films won an award over there, and I had a chance there. I was there about a week, and we flew into Lagos, which Lagos is kind of like New York on steroids as far as the businesses It's their international hub where you see a lot of Western stuff involved. They have KFC and they have restaurants, and they get all kind of American entertainers and stuff. And it's like a New York. But the great thing about my trip there was that we flew from Lagos to Port Harcourt, and we had to drive about 2.5 hours to Bayelsa, which is another state within Nigeria. And on that 2.5 hour drive, we went through some third world impoverished places. I'm talking about people living in more or less like 10 houses. And it was just really impoverished looking areas. And it just really looked bad. And I was like, this is a totally different world. But even the mere fact that when I got to the airport, when I flew into Lagos, the mere fact that they had armed guards with AK-47s. I'm like, I've flown all around the United States and flown to other countries, never encountered having to have armed guards there. So I'm looking at that, I'm looking at the people and how, and what impressed me so much was their hustle from the standpoint of they had to wake up every day to make it happen. It wasn't no type of welfare system. They were on the corner selling prepaid phone cards, selling fruit, selling this, selling that, because that's how they made it. But you look at that and you see, and there were so many people that I won't say propositioned me, but they talked to me about maybe sponsoring them into the United States so that they can have a chance over to come to the United States. And then during that same film cycle, we won an award in the UK. So we went over to the UK, to Birmingham, which is a very large city, a very nice city. But what surprised me, because when you think of the UK and United States, you think, okay, we're tiered very evenly together, and that the African Americans and the Black Brits, that we would we kind of almost, or at least I did, I kind of thought that they had it better than we did. But what surprised me was that the Black Brit filmmakers, they were very honest and said, we put on a good game and we act like we're at this level high, but y'all have it so much better than us, because we don't have organizations like the NAACP or the Rainbow Push Coalition or this person or that person who's able to speak up for our rights. They say when we speak up for our rights, it's almost as if we're shunned. Why are you talking about that? That's gone. You don't even deal with that. How it is is how it is. But we don't have those issues. We still have people on the ground from the bottom level on up to the top level, still fighting to make sure things are flowing for our liberties. Because as we've already said, it's not an issue of freedom. We're making sure we're walking in our liberties. So when you look at a third world impoverished country like parts of Nigeria, and then you even see how the Black Brits are living in the UK, and you think about it, you say, we have it so good over here. And so for people to make that statement, so many people will probably agree because they have not had that perspective of being over in another country. And it's so funny. I love this analogy that a true seeker talks about. His name is Charlie Ward. He said, perspective is everything. He said, he lives in Spain. He said, I can go, and I'm not a diver, but I can go out on this blue ocean and look at it from the top and say it is such and such and have one perspective. But he said you can have a diver that's under the water that has a totally different perspective. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing, same body of water, but they're different perspectives. And I think until we can see the broader perspective, as you said, Joe, we get caught up in, oh, woe is me, or I don't have it that good. It's that whole, what did we say growing up? The grass, it looks like the grass is green on the other side. Yeah. It really isn't. So we have to watch that, because this is the best living that you're gonna find on this planet. But the thing is, it's all about what you do with it, and that's the issue. Most people don't want to do what they have to do to get to the better living side.
Mm-hmm. And anybody that would think that this country is not the greatest country in earth ought to be told they crazy. You understand? Because all the nations of the earth look upon America for assistance, to keep rogue nations from taking over a lesser nation. They look for us for handouts and all those things. They look for us for all kind of help. But on this personal tip, what you were just saying, Miller, I'm a hustler. I've been working a full-time job since I got out of the military, active duty in '86, working a full-time job and operating my construction business since 1986 until now. I go home, I get off of work as a bus driver. I got 5 hours before I have to go back. I come home, I get something to eat, put on me some work clothes, get in my truck, and ride around the city scrapping. Make $200 in 4 or 5 hours, take the stuff to the junkyard, get my money, come home, take a shower, and go on back to work. If that ain't a great nation, what is? You know what I'm saying? Like you just said, we got to get out of this woe is me. We got to get out of settling. On the bus, I experience a lot of people that's willing to settle for $300-400 a month for free, doing nothing. You know what I mean? All they do, they get their check on the first of the month. They spend it up in the first week, and then all they talk about for the next 3 weeks is the first of the month. And I've talked to them about it, and they settle for that. I mean, it's actually well with their soul to do that. So a joker like that can't talk about what America ain't.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? How you gonna talk about what America ain't if he ain't willing to do nothing?
Well, and he's getting some free, and America's giving him free money. I mean, how you upset about? And you know what? And what you're saying is critical for us, because we know the foundation of that is the thing called critical theory. And what critical theory is it criticizes all the institutions of a nation. It psychologically twists the thoughts of people to think, wow, look how horrible this country is. Look at all the terrible stuff that's happened. They show you on the news every day what a terrible nation. But yet, you know, all the opportunities that are here in this country, you know, you think about the fact that, you know, the middle class here in America is richer, like I said, is richer and more well off than 70-80% of the rest of the world. If you're middle class in America, you're richer than 80% of the rest of the world. Think about the fact that in America here in 2021, you know, go back a generation or two and think about the lack of resources we had in our community. You think about the living conditions that our grandparents and great grandparents, you know, my papa who raised me, you know, 1912 in Georgia, he told me that he really didn't have any shoes. He used to have to walk to school. And then when he was 13, he worked in the brickyard. He used to have to walk back and forth to work at 13 years old. And when he got older, I remember him always telling me, make sure you get some good shoes, make sure. And I used to ask him, why are you so focused on shoes? He said, when I was growing up, I didn't have any shoes. And when I got old enough, they used to have these shoes called brocans. And he said, because he was used to not wearing shoes, he would have to get his younger brother to wear his shoes until they got broken in so he could wear them. And so I think about those stories that I used to hear. And I know now we have more than enough, right? But they were satisfied. They weren't complaining about anything. He told me that when I asked him one time when I was in elementary school, I asked him about the Great Depression. He said he didn't know anything about the Depression until years later when he was grown. Someone told him about it, because he said they were so poor that it didn't affect them. You know what I mean? Like those kind of stories. And so when I think about how far we've progressed, when I think about the amount of resources we have in our community, when we think about how you said, Miller, about that list of multimillionaires and billionaire Black corporations and all those type of things, because this is a land of opportunity, we have to start looking at things from a realistic standpoint and stop allowing the media to keep pushing that poison down our throat about racism is terrible in America, terrible in America. And all those things that we keep hearing every single day. And it's us who have to have these conversations to say to people, no, it's not that bad. You have young people that are angry and bitter against the country. They don't have any perspective of how good things are. You know, I remember growing up and we had a pair of school sneakers and our play sneakers. That was it, you know. And when I came home from school, I had to take off my school sneakers and put on my play sneakers and wear them out, because that was the only pair of sneakers I would get until, you know, whenever. And so I say all that to say that, you know, look at the conditions of the lives of most of our people, and look at how much better we have it now and how far we've come, you know, as a group.
And also, the parents got to start being parents. You know what I mean? Because if the parents ain't teaching the children the truth, then the children coming up under the same lies that their parents living under. You know what I mean? So it's just a vicious cycle of nobody teaching nobody, and all of them crying about the same stuff, and they wrong as a $3 bill. You know, you got to teach them the right stuff. I mean, and we just start right here with this podcast. I just pray that the people are listening and don't just cast aside what we saying because it don't sound right to them, or it doesn't fit their scenario or their agenda, and just look into what we talking about and find the bigger picture.
Yeah, and it boils down so much to what are you doing with the resources that you have. And
yes,
that's in so many instances is the falling point, because so many times we get caught up in the society that we live in, and we want this and we want that, and we want to experience this and experience that. And trust me, there's nothing wrong with doing those different things, but you have to have your priorities set straight. When you're able to put monies aside and you're able to do things from a position of, okay, I've saved this to do this, as opposed to I'm bringing in whatever I'm bringing in, I'm using that to do these things that I want to do. And that's been the downfall, because if you really think about what most, especially the middle class, make now, and unfortunately, a lot of middle class, they live paycheck to paycheck. And it's because they have extended themselves too far. They have not put monies to the side, that they have, I guess, they've endeavored to enjoy too many things, too many luxuries at this point. And at the end of the day, we have to look at it and say, you know, I'm not going to be able to work all my life. At some point, I need to slow down. At some point, I need to be able to retire. And have I put up to the side to actually retire? Or will I have to work to 70 to 75 to do that? And those are some of the things that we have to look at. And if you look at a lot of immigrants that come over from other countries, you look at our Hispanic brothers and sisters, and even look at some of the other nations, people that come over here, they will pile up in one house, and they will live off little or nothing. They will build what you have. You look at what has happened with the construction industry. You talk about being in construction. Look at how the Hispanics have come in, to where at one time the Hispanics were coming in, and you would see them being the laborers. But there'd be a bunch of them living in one house, because they had a goal that, okay, if we come together, we pool our resources, we build something, then we all can have something. Now you go on construction sites, and what do you see? You see the same Hispanics that were just once laborers. You see them as the electrical contractors. You see them as the roofing contractors. They built a system, and that's the thing that we have to stop and look at and say, you know, how can we pool our resources to build something for the future? We have to be more future oriented than we are oriented into what can we have right now, because there's always going to be a what we can have right now, because the way the markets do it, they bring out things and they market things so that they can continue getting your money, because that's how they make their money. We stop and say, you know what, I don't need that right now. I'll wait for a while. I'll save some money. I'll save money. That's my spendthrift money, and I'll use that. And when we come from that perspective, I think it will shift a whole lot of things. It will shift us into a better place, to where we can actually keep we can keep pace with what is going on. Because we talked about this in an earlier podcast. You look at now, there was an article that came out that talked about how the Nigerian immigrants are the wealthiest individuals as far as the class of people at this point in time. And then right below that, I think it was I forgot who was under that, but that right there shows you that, okay, America is not systemically racist against people of color, because I think the top 3 positions were groups of people of color. You didn't hit the Ashkenazi Jews. You didn't hit the Jews until I think number 4, and then you hit European Jew. I mean, you hit just the European Caucasians. I think they were 5th on that list. But I think before them was I think it was Nigerians, Chinese immigrants, and I think the 3rd was maybe Indian or Philippines. But you look at those groups of people and they pool their resources. Even the Nigerians. I have several friends that are Nigerian that live in the general area where I live and live other places, and they pool their resources. They make it. You see the same thing with the Asians. They come together, they pool their resources, and they make it. And that is the thing that we as African Americans are failing to do. We did it back prior to the civil rights era. When it was Jim Crow era, when it was segregation, we pooled our resources. We had communities like Tulsa, we had Rosewood, we had other places, even where I am in Savannah, there was a whole strip. It's called Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard now, but it used to be called West Broad. That was where all the blacks were. And they had the black doctors who lived on that corridor. You had the black businesses, you had the black doctor's office. It was there. It's because they pooled their resources to make it better for people. And it wasn't to say you exclude people, but when you can build upon your foundation as a race, as they call us, and I don't like that term, under that construct, then other people will see that you cohesively come together and you work together. And when an outside source sees that cohesiveness, they are more attuned into saying, okay, I'll work with them because I see they can work together, they can build some things.
Yes.
When you look from an outside perspective and all you see is divisiveness, like, no, I really don't want to deal with them.
Yes.
Those are some of the things we have to get at our core. We have to understand these are some of the things that's holding us back. And it's not so much the man or the powers that be, or some people might say the white man holding us back. No, it's ourselves. We have too many doctors, too many lawyers, too many people in business, too many people who have didn't go to school and get a degree, but they had a trade that allowed them to make a lot of money and obtain a good life, or to live, to have a good source of income. We have too many people who are doing that type of thing to say, okay, this system is hell bent against us. That's just not the case. Not the case.
On my bus route 12, I go by a learning center that sells learning books and things like that. And I'm always seeing foreigners coming in and out of that place. They come out of there with bags of books. They go in and out of there with their children. You know what I mean? And that's why if you look at the average graduation class, it's foreigners that's getting them scholarships and all that stuff. You know what I mean? Our people ain't doing it. When there's a courthouse being built on 6th and Raleigh Street, 6th and 7th and Raleigh, I call it the major contractor for that courthouse. I think they was either from Jersey or Maryland. I called the manager myself because there was no black companies, you know what I mean, local companies working at that courthouse, on that courthouse. They put a sign up a half a block long, hiring. Across the street was the Bethesda Mission, a bunch of jokers that ain't got no job, ain't got nowhere to live. They on that porch every day. And to this day right now, and this was, they started building this thing some time ago. I only saw one black guy over there in all this time because the jokers don't want to do anything. And like you said, when we get money, we run to the store and we buying up sneakers, $300 sneakers and $90 tore up holy jeans. And I've seen people go in the store and buy a t-shirt in the Asian store, buy a brand new t-shirt in the bag, take the one he got on that got a little smudge on it and throw it aside and put the new one on. That's the way they living. And so by living that way, they'll never get anything.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's sickening, man. I drive the bus every day, and a monthly bus pass costs $49. And I watch the same people get on the bus every day. They put $2.05 in, $2 to pay the fare. $1.80 to pay the fare, 25 cents for the transfer. So that's their way to work. They do the same thing coming back 5 days a week. That's over $20. So that's over $80 in a month. And I tell them, look, a monthly pass only costs $40. I talked to a girl today. I talked to her all 5 days last week. And every time I say, yeah, I know, but they don't do it. You know what I mean? And that's the mentality they got. They rather get on the bus every day and put 205 in there to go to work, 205 to come back, rather than just go buy a $49 monthly pass. Then you can ride the bus for a whole month all you want. And that's the mentality they're working with, man. It's sad.
Yeah. You know, it's this famous saying, and I forgot who actually said it. I almost want to say it's John F. Kennedy said it. It said, ask not what you can do for your country. I mean, ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country. I think we have to adopt that philosophy for ourselves. Ask not what our country can do for us, but ask what we can do for ourselves.
Yes.
When we stop thinking about, okay, what
underprivileged
government is doing to give this to that, because you know it's a big saying. A lot of people talk about how, you know, these Indian people come from India and they get all these different loans and they start businesses, buy hotels and whatnot. And I'm not getting into that because I don't know exactly what the dealing is on that. I don't know if that's actually true or not. But the bottom line is that they come with a business plan, they put things together, and a lot of them, because I know several, I have several Indian people from India that I'm associated with, and a lot of them come over sometimes and they work in the hotels so that they can learn the business. And then they get sponsored into buying their own business. It's that same thing. You know, I work in here, I help you out, help me understand this and help me advance by getting what I need. And unfortunately, we don't do that a lot. But we have to stop saying, what can the country do for us? What kind of handout are you gonna give us? When is the next stimulus is gonna come out? Are you gonna continue getting unemployment? We have to stop thinking about that because you're not gonna gain wealth off unemployment. You're not gonna gain wealth off stimulus unless you just happen to invest it in the right stock and it just blows up. But here again, you're still taking money, your resources, and putting it into the right place. It's not just spending it and saying, I'm just gonna do this with it. We have to look at what avenues we can do to get out of our situation. And that's just not us, that's anybody. That's whether it's our Caucasian brothers and sisters, Hispanics, Asians, some people are applying these things right now. But we have to look, okay, I have a goal. How can I get out of here? You know, I have a friend and she actually had degrees in her country. She's from Africa, smaller country in Africa, came over to the United States. They did not recognize her degrees. She went back to school to get essentially the same type of degree that she had over there so that she can get the credentials she needs to actually work over here and be able to do better. And the thing about what she's doing, she's not just making it better for herself, she's sending money back and taking money back to her country to help other people. And those are the things that we have to look at. How can we help ourselves? Start with yourself. How can I help myself become better? It's like that the airline philosophy. You know, if the plane is going down, put your life jacket on yourself first. Take care of yourself first, and then help somebody else. So let me take care of what I have to do to get myself in a better position so that I can in turn come back and help somebody else. Because if I'm sinking and I try to help somebody else, they're going to sink right along with me.
That's right.
Apply these philosophies. You know, you said another thing, you talked about you see a lot of people going into the resource center and coming out with books and different things. If you study people who make money or people who are wealthy, you will see that they read a lot. That's very key. Reading is very, because it broadens your perspective, it broadens your horizon. Like I said, back in my early 20s, when I started reading Black Enterprise magazine, I had no idea that there were that many African American millionaires. It came about by me reading. And those are the things that we lack. When we only see things in our neighborhood, when we only see things that are directly around us, and we don't expose ourselves to greater, we're subject to repeat only what we see. And I think that's a big fallout of what goes on in our inner city neighborhoods with our young men killing themselves. They're only seeing a repetition of what's in their neighborhood. This is what I got to do to get out. This is what I got to do to make it. This is what I have to do, as opposed to seeing a broader perspective. And those are the things that we have got to get ingrained into African Americans to help us shift this tide to where we can actually become more productive for ourselves. At the end of the day, it's about helping ourselves, because when you become better, everybody becomes better. And we don't realize that when we become better, everybody becomes better, because we are essentially all a chain link fence. And if one link is weak, all of us are weak.
All of it is weak.
We got to hold it. But if we can bring everybody else up and keep strengthening each link, then we have a stronger fence.
And
we have
to and so it starts with the parents, man, because again, you know, if everything you said is correct. So if we don't get to these parents the importance of training up their children, the next generation gonna be in the same predicament, and the generation behind them gonna be in the same predicament, because we are allowing ourselves to be governed by what we see in a 5-block radius, what we hear in a 5-block radius. Yeah, you know, what goes on in our neighborhood. And the same stuff going on in the neighborhood is the stuff that's being promoted on all the news channels every day. So that's the biggest scope we have. That's the biggest outlook in life we have. And so it's never going to be any growth. It's always going to be the same things. Jokers sitting around doing nothing all day, listening to that rap music and the promotion of that rap music. And so now you got your kids running around here. They rather low ride than the wear pants. Like I had a cat, a young man get on my bus. He was going for an interview. He had on dress clothes, but the pants was hanging off of him. So, you know, I sat him down and I told him, you know, first of all, man, you don't want to go in the interview with your pants falling off you, because I'm telling you, if you do that, then as soon as you walk out the door, they're going to drop your application in the trash. I told him to tighten up, put your shirt in your pants, tighten your belt up. When you go in there, I told him some questions to ask to make himself seem interested in the job. And one of the questions I told him to ask the interviewer is, what is the potential of growth in the company? Can an employee invest in the company? And these type of things. I said, don't talk that street talk. Say yes, sir, no, sir, this kind of thing. And if you're afraid to look at him eye to eye, look at him at the center of his forehead, and it'll seem like you're looking at him eye to eye. And I don't know if he did it, but that's what I told him, you know. And so we got to start bringing up our youth to understand these things, or that's going to be a vicious cycle and repeating the same stuff over and over again.
Yeah, we definitely have to get out of it. We have to shift, and it's going to take us helping each other. It's going to take us having these conversations. It's going to take us sharing information to help pull us out of this. And not just, like I said, it's not just about us. This message applies to everybody.
Yes.
Everybody who feel that they're in a downtrodden position. And, you know, everybody doesn't have the wherewithal and the ability to travel like we may have traveled. But, you know, sometimes just getting out of your neighborhood, because you'll see it's like that across the track syndrome. You know, if you stay on one side of the track, all you see is if you're in a broken down side of the neighborhood, that's all you see. But unless you venture across that track and you see that there's a whole nother world out there, you'll never see something that you need to aspire for. So it's we have to keep those things in mind. Just have to keep those things in mind. So,
and we also we can let them know that in helping yourself, you ain't got to go to college and get a college degree, being a doctor or a lawyer or anything like that. I took courses through hack, you know, construction, carpentry courses, bricklaying courses, basic electronics, basic construction carpentry, to enhance my experience as a contractor. You know what I mean? And that's all they have. That's all they have to do. And you can open up your own company and do as much as you want. I even did a government contract in Winchester, Virginia. You know what I mean? So if they took it upon themselves to come up out of their own personal ideology and look into building their own thing, any kind of trade to help you get what you want, you know what I mean? And so that's what we have to tell them. We have to help them to understand that they can come up out of them streets. They can come up out of that woe is me attitude. They can come up out of that we ain't free in America attitude, and come up out of that I'll settle for the $500 a month free income from the welfare department, because all of that stuff is going to come to an end. Again, it's the agenda that they are promoting that we got to help these people understand.
Yep, you got it. And I think I'm going to say this, and I guess it's coming up around our wrap up time. But I think the biggest thing I can take from what you said is we have to learn how to sacrifice now to build a legacy in the future for us. For ourselves, for our children, for our children's children. That's what the Bible said, that a good man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. And in so many instances, we're not leaving a legacy. Sometimes the legacy is knowledge. Sometimes the legacy is information. A lot of times that legacy has to do with land or money, but we're not leaving our children with anything to build on. So I think the bottom line is that we have to start making those sacrifices now so that we can build a foundation that our future generations can continue to build upon.
Yes. And I'm going to leave with this, because I believe this will help them to see exactly what you just said. How many people do we know that had passed away and their loved ones had to have dinners, fish dinners and chicken dinners and all of these handouts to bury them? Why? Because the person that died didn't leave no preparations to take care of that. You know what I mean? And that's where we are as a people. I've seen it thousands and thousands, I mean, not thousands, but a whole lot of time, to the point where I made up my mind that when I leave this earth, my sons are not going to have a fish dinner sale to bury me, and they ain't going to have to go in debt trying to pay my debt, because the creditors is chasing my children to pay stuff that I owe. All my mess going to be paid off, and I'm going to be sure to leave enough for my children. I told them, don't be spending $25,000 on no casket. Buy me a $5,000 box if you want to do that. You know what I mean? And take that money and split it between my children and my grandchildren. But this is what we got to do. We got to help our people understand where we are and where we should be. And what you just said is proper. Training up our children in the way that they shall go, so that when they are older, they will not depart from it. And that's on a spiritual sense and life itself. You understand? Because it's life itself is a part of this thing. Right. It's the spiritual, our relationship with God is the main focus, and training up our children in the way to go as in a relationship with God, a righteous relationship with God, and then allow God to help us figure out where we're going in life.
Amen. Well,
we can't leave God out.
You're right. There's nothing else to say. All I'm gonna say is Selah. Selah.
Okay, so you want to close this out in prayer?
Yeah, this has been another great episode of Expanding Perspectives. Our brother Joe had to step away for a while, but we were able to hold down the fort without him, and we're gonna go ahead and close out in prayer. And we just pray that those who see this will take it and run with it. So let's pray out. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you, God, for this wonderful time of just discussing issues that are prevalent in our society, Lord, discussing the misinformation, discussing the wrong thought process, discussing the agendas of the enemy, because, Lord, this is ultimately a battle of good and evil, God, and the enemy has the plan and a purpose for our lives that goes against the plan and purpose that you have for us, God. So we ask right now, God, that you just enlighten people, Lord, with the messages that you are allowing us to put out. But not just that, Lord, we urge each and every person to go do research themselves, God. Take the information that we said, go look up the information, think about it thoroughly, Lord. Allow people to utilize their critical thinking skills to see beyond the minutia of what the mainstream media is putting out, to see beyond the rhetoric that those individuals who have aligned themselves with the global elitists, Lord, are putting out against not just African Americans, God, but against humanity. God, this is just something that is not affecting African Americans, Lord, but this whole agenda is affecting us as a human race, God. So we ask you right now, Lord, to open the eyes and ears of the people, God. And we pray right now, Lord, that the cast covering that the enemy has placed over the people is ripped off right now, Lord, so that they can see they can see what hand the enemy is playing against us, God, and that we can pray fervently, Lord, against those plans, and not just pray, God, that we can also do the work that you've called us to do, Lord, so that we can shift this tide to a place where your people are prospering. All people can prosper, God.
Yes.
Because you love all of us, God. You love your children, God. And we just pray right now, Lord, that we continue to stand.
Yes,
We
God.
believers, not just the three of us, but Lord, all believers stand up and fight for what is right. So we thank you, God, for what you're doing. We praise your holy name, God. And we say, Lord, let your will be done. And Lord, empower and activate your people to bring your will forth on this earth.
Yes, God.
Then we pray. Amen.
Amen. All right, my brother. Love you.
All right.
Holler
Love you,
at you
brother.
next week.
All right.
Peace. Tell your wife I said hi.
Will do.
And your daughters.
All right. Will do, brother. All right.
All right. Peace.
Good night.